Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world. Today, we're going to be using Pierce Brown's novel Red Rising as a structural model to understand how a caste-based power system is built, maintained, and reproduced.
So, we're not just looking at this as a story, right? We're going to treat this fictional world like a detailed specimen under a microscope. And the big question we're asking is this: how does this meticulously designed social pyramid actually work? And maybe more importantly, what can it teach us about the architecture of power in our own world?
Okay, so first things first, we have to understand the fundamental structure of the society's hierarchy. You can think of it as the blueprint. Everything else is built right on top of this. And the system is defined with, just stark precision. It's not just a social thing, it's biological. It's a color hierarchy, where literally every group is genetically engineered for a specific job. This whole setup is designed to perfectly allocate all the labor, all the status, and all the power.
Yeah, this slide really lays out the pyramid perfectly. You've got the golds at the very top. They're the absolute rulers. And then you see this whole descending ladder of specialized castes. You've got grays for enforcement, silvers for money, blues for flying ships, all the way down to the pinks for service and pleasure. And then, right at the very bottom, you have the reds, who do all the hard manual labor. But here's the crucial point. Every single color has a purpose, and that purpose is to serve and prop up the golds.
So, okay, you have this incredibly rigid structure. But how do you actually get people to stay in their designated place? Well, that brings us to the logic of incentives. This is the secret sauce, really. It's how the system actively shapes the behavior of every single person inside it. And what's so fascinating here is the massive contrast in how they control people. For the Reds, the low caste at the bottom, it's all about managing them through myth and scarcity. They're fed this founding story about being heroic pioneers, and they're kept poor, forced to compete for just scraps. But for the Golds at the top, it's the complete opposite. They aren't just managed, they are refined. They're sharpened through this relentless, almost ritualized competition. And this quote, wow, this just perfectly captures the Gold ideology. Power must be claimed. Only those fit for power will survive. This is the kind of thing that's literally drilled into them at the Institute, which is their brutal training ground. It's basically a philosophy of forced survival of the fittest. Power isn't something you just inherit, it's something you have to conquer. And what does this do? It ensures the ruling class stays sharp, ruthless, and completely, absolutely convinced of its own superiority.
So you've got these inputs, right? A super rigid structure and these very carefully tailored incentives. So what kind of outputs does a system like this produce? Well, let's take a look at the results, which, as you'll see, are pretty predictable.
And yeah, the outcomes are exactly what the system was designed for. You get the Reds, who develop this internalized obedience. They actually believe their sacrifice is noble. Meanwhile, the Golds practice this ritualized brutality that they see as their right, their duty. The end result is a system that isn't just stable, it's self-reinforcing. It literally manufactures its own legitimacy. And that right there, that's the psychological genius of the whole thing. The system works so well because it actually convinces its members to participate in it. It manages to frame this brutal hierarchy not as oppression, but as something natural, something necessary, even noble. And when that happens, the controlled to become complicit in their own subjugation. Which of course leads us to a really crucial question. If the whole structure is that oppressive, why doesn't it just collapse? How on earth does this kind of power manage to persist against what seem like impossible odds?
It's the question on everyone's mind, right? You've got billions of people at the bottom. Why don't they just rise up and overthrow the tiny, tiny minority at the top?
Well, here's a really powerful way to think about why it's so resilient. Let's imagine the hierarchy as a computer's operating system. It's totally vertically integrated, right? And each color, gold, silver, red, is like a coded permission level. So the Reds, they have the lowest user access. They can't get to the same information, the same resources, or the same tools that the higher colors can. They literally can't even see the full system they're a part of. And that gets us to the system's ultimate firewall, its greatest defense. It survives by creating a profound crisis in perception. See, by strictly limiting what each color is allowed to know, it stops them from ever seeing the full source code of their own reality. How can you organize a rebellion if you don't even realize you're a slave?
And this quote, it just gets right to the heart of how the system justifies itself. And would you have been happier if you knew you were a slave? Is it not better to lie? The lie is actually framed as a kind of mercy.
It's a perfect closed loop. The lie keeps people docile, and then their docility is used as proof that the lie is for their own good.
Okay, so let's pull this model out of the world of fiction for a minute and see how its mechanics hold up a mirror to some of the real-world structures of power we see all around us.
Because the real power of a model like this is that its fundamental logic, well, it isn't just confined to science fiction. You can start to see its echoes all over the place.
Let's draw some of those parallels right now. You take the Institute, this brutal arena for selecting the elite. Well, you can see clear analogs in our world's elite universities, military academies, or those exclusive corporate leadership programs. They're all pipelines designed to find and train the next generation of leaders. And the myth they feed the Reds. Think about national founding myths, or even those company culture stories we tell ourselves, and the whole system of gold patronage. That's a perfect model for how elite status gets reproduced, right? Through things like nepotism, powerful alumni networks, and of course inherited wealth and status.
So what this model really gives us is a new lens, a new way to see with a bit more structural clarity. And it prompts us to ask a final, pretty provocative question. What are the coded permissions of the systems that you live in? What are the invisible rules, the founding myths that you navigate every single day? Crisis in Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a longer, audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.